I was dying on the operating table, while my family was celebrating. When they finally reached out, I'd already moved on. I flatlined twice on an operating table. Twice. My heart stopped while I was bleeding internally, and you know where my family was? At my sister's engagement party, eating cake, taking photos, and when I finally woke up 40 hours later, you want to know how many of them came to see me that night? 0. Not a single one. But that's not even the craziest part of this story. My name is Rachel, and before this story happened, I was living what looked like a perfect life on the outside. I worked as a marketing director for a pharmaceutical company in Boston, made good money, had a boyfriend I lived with, the whole 9 yards. But looking back, I was drowning. The thing is, my family, they had this way of making me feel like I was always the problem. Like I was the dramatic one, the needy one, the one who messed things up. My younger sister, Michelle, was basically the golden child. She went to Harvard, worked at some fancy finance firm in New York, got engaged to this guy James whose family basically owns half of Connecticut. My parents, they were completely obsessed with making Michelle's engagement party happen. We're talking about spending months planning this thing, like it was a royal wedding or something. Every Sunday dinner at my parents' house in Cambridge turned into this planning session where my mom would go on and on about the botanical gardens, the live orchestra, Michelle's designer dress. And my dad would debate wines for like an hour. I'd just sit there, pushing food around my plate, nodding along. Then I started getting sick. It started in September. Just stomach pain that I figured was stress from work. Too much coffee, not enough sleep. That's what I told myself anyway. I was taking ibuprofen like candy and just pushing through. My boyfriend, David, noticed I wasn't eating much. We'd been together 3 years, lived together in this really nice apartment in Back Bay. He kept telling me to go to the doctor, but I kept brushing it off. By October, the pain was getting worse. Like, I'd wake up and not be able to eat. I finally went to the doctor, and she basically said it was probably just stress and gave me acid reflux medication. Second visit, she ordered an ultrasound. It showed something weird with my appendix, but nothing definitive. She referred me to a specialist, but the earliest appointment was like 4 weeks out. She told me if it got unbearable, go to the emergency room. Don't wait. But here's the thing about living your whole life feeling like you're overreacting. You don't actually go to the emergency room. You just keep going to work. David had to travel to Seattle for a project the week before the engagement party. Before he left, he literally begged me to take this seriously. But I didn't want him stressed out from 2,500 miles away, so I downplayed everything. It's fine, I'm fine. I'll get it checked out when you're back. December 1st, the day of the party. I woke up at 5 in the morning and couldn't stop throwing up. The pain was so bad I was literally drenched in sweat, even though it was freezing outside. I called in sick to work, which I basically never did, and spent the day curled up on my couch with a heating pad. Around 3 o'clock, my mom called. "Rachel, please tell me you're getting ready," she said. "No, how are you feeling? No, are you okay?" "Just, are you getting ready?" I told her I wasn't feeling well, that I didn't think I could make it. My voice was barely above a whisper because moving hurt that much. And her response? "You're joking." She said that. "You're joking." Like I was making this up for attention. I told her I was serious, that I had really bad stomach pain that was getting worse. And she literally said, and I'll never forget this, "You've always been overly theatrical about being sick." Then she brought up the time in high school when I thought I had mono and it turned out to be a cold. And the skiing accident where I thought I broke my ankle but it was just a sprain. Like those two things meant I couldn't possibly be sick now. "This is different, Mom," I told her. "It's always different with you, Julia. You have some pain and it escalates into a medical emergency." She told me to take Tylenol, to get myself together. And then she said something that just, it landed different. "Your sister needs you to be there. We all do. Don't disgrace us by being the only family member who fails to show up." The guilt hit like a truck. Because that's what happened in my family. If you weren't there, you were letting everyone down. If you missed something, you were being selfish. If you prioritized yourself, you were being dramatic. So I did it. I got dressed. I put on makeup to hide how pale I was. I called a rideshare. Every bump in that car felt like someone was stabbing me from the inside. But I breathed through it. And when I got to the botanical gardens, I have to admit, the venue was actually stunning. Thousands of little lights everywhere. My sister looked beautiful. My parents were working the room like they always do. Finally, my dad said when he saw me, "We were beginning to think you'd skip your own sister's party." I made it through family photos. I'm not gonna lie, I had to lean against a pillar between shots because I could barely stand. I sipped ginger ale. I avoided the food tables because the thought of eating made me want to puke. My mom kept introducing me to James's relatives, people whose names I immediately forgot because the pain was just blocking everything else out. Around 9 at night, I found my mom by the bar. "Mom, I need to go home. Something is really wrong." She looked at me like I'd just told her I was moving to Mars. "Rachel, we haven't even finished the toasts yet. Can you please hang on for another hour?" I said I didn't think I could. She told me to sit in the orchid room for a while. Just find somewhere quiet. But I absolutely could not leave until Michelle and James cut the cake, because it would destroy her. So I went to the orchid room. It was cool and empty, which was the only good thing about any of this. I sat there leaning forward because that hurt less than sitting up straight, watching through the glass walls as everyone celebrated. The orchestra played. People danced. My sister was the center of attention. And then around 9:15, something shifted. The pain was constant waves, and I was breathing through it, and then it's hard to describe. It felt like something inside me exploded. Just completely gave way. The whole world went white. I tried to stand up, and I just fell. I don't remember much after that. Little fragments that come back at 3 in the morning when I can't sleep. The cold tile floor on my face. Someone screaming for help. The taste of blood in my mouth. Being lifted onto a stretcher. The greenhouse roof spinning above me as they wheeled me through the crowd. Apparently, I found this out later from one of Michelle's friends. I was laying in a pool of blood. My champagne color dress, the one I'd specifically bought for this party, was completely soaked in blood. Paramedics were working on me, frantically. And get this, my parents' reaction? According to this friend, who was shocked enough to remember it clearly, my mom said, "Could she really not have held on until after the cake cutting?" That's what she was worried about. The ambulance got me to Massachusetts General Hospital, where doctors discovered my appendix hadn't just ruptured. It had been slowly leaking for days. My entire abdominal cavity was filled with infection and internal bleeding. They got me into surgery immediately. The whole procedure took 5 hours. And during that surgery, I flatlined twice. Twice my heart stopped while they were trying to save my life. The surgeon later told David, who'd flown back from Seattle, that I was basically in septic shock. I'd lost so much blood. He said I was maybe minutes away from it being too late. My family was at the botanical gardens when I was dying on an operating table. The gala continued. After the ambulance left, my parents told people I'd had a medical episode, but I was fine and being treated. They continued with the party. The toasts happened. The cake was cut. The orchestra played until midnight. That whole night, not one single member of my family came to the hospital. I woke up 40 hours later in the ICU. I was intubated, hooked up to machines, looking like something out of a sci-fi movie. David was sleeping in a recliner next to my bed. When I opened my eyes, he called the nurse and held my hand while I tried to understand what had happened. My parents visited on day 3. By then, I'd been moved to a regular room, but I was still in a ton of pain and on 4 different antibiotics. My mom brought cheap flowers from the grocery store. "Rachel, thank God you're all right," she said, setting them on the ledge. "You gave us quite a scare." My dad just stood in the doorway looking uncomfortable. And I looked at them. My head was still fuzzy from pain medication, but clear enough to see they didn't actually care. Not really. Not the way a parent should care when their kid nearly dies. You didn't come, I said. My throat was raw from the breathing tube. I nearly died and you didn't come. My mom's response was to rearrange the flowers. The doctor said you were in surgery and there was nothing we could do. It seemed more sensible to stay with Michelle. She was very upset about what happened. I am devastated I ruined her party, I said. And my mom's face actually hardened. She said it was unfair, that I was being unfair, that Michelle was concerned about me, that my timing was poor. Do you have any idea how much the gala cost? How many important people were there? James's parents were appalled by the chaos. And then my dad said something I'll never forget, but you didn't die. The doctor saved you. Everything turned out fine. There's no need to be overly theatrical about it. Theatrical. There was that word again. The same word my mother had used when I tried to tell her I was sick. That's when something broke inside me. Like I could actually feel it. A fracture that had been forming for years just split wide open. I need you both to leave, I said quietly. Rachel, don't be childish, my mom started. Both of you. Out. They exchanged looks. My mom's jaw tightened in that way it does when she's angry but trying to look composed. They left without saying anything else. And I cried. For the first time since waking up, I completely fell apart. David held me as carefully as he could, without disturbing all my tubes and wires, and I just cried. Michelle texted me 4 days after my surgery. Not called. Texted. Mom said you're awake. Glad you're okay. Sorry the timing of everything was so awful. Not sorry she hadn't visited. Not sorry she'd asked me to come while I was literally dying. Sorry about the timing. Like my medical emergency was an inconvenient scheduling conflict. I stared at that text for a long time before I deleted it without responding. Megan, my best friend from college, came up from New York twice to visit me while I was in the hospital. She was there when I actually needed someone. My coworkers sent flowers. Even some people from my gym sent cards. But my parents never came back. And Michelle never visited. When I was discharged, my mom called while David was helping me into actual clothes instead of a hospital gown. She opened with this. Your father, and I think you owe Michelle an apology. I almost dropped the phone. Excuse me. Her engagement gala was supposed to be the highlight of her year, Rachel, but instead the entire night became about you and your medical problems. Guests left early. The photographer couldn't get all the shots Michelle wanted because of the ambulance and police cars outside. I was dying, Mom. I'm apologizing for nearly dying at an inconvenient time. You've always had to make everything about you. Even as a child, you couldn't stand it when Michelle got attention. James's mother was asking invasive questions about our family's medical history. It was embarrassing. That's when I actually understood what was happening. This wasn't about me being sick. This wasn't about me nearly dying. It was about how my illness had disrupted their perfect day, how it made them look bad. You're right, I said flatly. I'm sorry for nearly dying at such an inconvenient moment. It won't happen again. That's more like it. I'm glad you're finally being rational about this. She said that, like I was being irrational by expecting my family to care that I'd been on death's door. David was standing there holding my shoes with pure rage on his face. Did she really just, he started. I nodded. Just drive me home. We can talk about it later. That night, David asked me what I was going to do. I'm going to let them go, I said. What do you mean? I mean I'm done. With my parents, with Michelle, with all of it. They've shown me exactly where I rank in their priorities, and I'm tired of pretending it doesn't matter. David just squeezed my hand. I support whatever you decide, but are you sure? These are permanent decisions, Rachel. They chose permanency when they stayed at that party while I was dying. I'm just respecting their choice. Over the next 2 weeks, while I was recovering, a plan started forming. I wasn't trying to be dramatic about it. I wasn't trying to punish anyone. I wanted to remove myself from their lives as completely and cleanly as possible. I started small. I stopped responding to my mom's texts and calls. When my dad eventually called wondering where I was, I answered once to say I was busy with recovery and would contact him when I was ready. For weeks after my surgery, David and I went to Colorado to spend Thanksgiving with his parents. His parents, these people I wasn't even related to by blood, were more concerned about my health than my own family. They asked how I was feeling. They made sure I wasn't overdoing it. They actually cared. My mom kept sending increasingly irritated messages demanding to know where I was and why I hadn't told anyone. Christmas was the real test. My family had this tradition: Christmas Eve at my parents' house. It was sacred in the Matthews household. My mom called 2 weeks before to confirm I was coming. I let it go to voicemail. Then I did something I'd never done before. I blocked her phone number, and my dad's, and Michelle's, and the handful of relatives who started calling trying to figure out why I was being so difficult. The silence was immediate. No calls, no texts, no emails, nothing. Ethan asked me a bunch of times if I was really sure about this. I was, because for the first time in my adult life I felt light. Like this weight that had been pressing down on me my entire life was finally gone. The weight of their expectations. The weight of never being enough. The weight of always being the problem. I changed my phone number in January. Didn't give it to any family members. In February, I moved to a different apartment in Brooklyn. Somewhere nobody knew the address. I blocked them on social media. Changed my emergency contacts at work. And by March, I basically vanished from their lives. Megan told me later that she ran into an old family friend who said my parents were confused at first, then annoyed, then just bewildered by my absence. Apparently, they even drove to my old apartment building just to be told by the landlord that I'd moved with no forwarding address. They think you've had some kind of breakdown, Megan told me over coffee. They're not worried about me, I said. They're worried about how it looks that their daughter disappeared. Megan studied me carefully. You really think you can keep this up forever? I don't know about forever, I said, but I can keep it up as long as I need to. And honestly, I felt better than I had in years. My work got better because I wasn't constantly distracted by family drama. My relationship with David deepened because I wasn't using him as an emotional buffer against my parents' criticism. I started running again. Started painting, something I loved in college, but quit because my mom said it was a waste of time. 9 months went by like that. I was at a conference in New York in late July. I got in an elevator and ran into one of James's cousins. She recognized me immediately and started giving me this sympathetic speech about how awful everything must be with my father and how she hoped he'd recover quickly. I had no idea what she was talking about. I'm sorry, what happened to my father? Her face went white. Oh my God, you don't know. Your father had a heart attack 3 days ago. He's at Mount Auburn Hospital. I got off on the wrong floor and just stood there in a hallway for 10 minutes, staring at my phone. Of course, they'd tried to reach me. I'd blocked all their numbers. I'd been completely unreachable. The question was, did I care? I called David. Do you want to see him? He asked. He's my father. Regardless of everything else, he's still my father. Or do you feel like you should see him? Because those are two different things, Rachel. I thought about waking up in the ICU and finding out my family had stayed at a party instead of coming to see me. I thought about my mom bringing me flowers and asking why I'd embarrassed them. I thought about being told I was melodramatic. I don't want to see him, I admitted. Okay, David said. We're good then. I stayed in New York for the rest of the conference. I looked at a news article that mentioned John, a prominent Boston attorney, had suffered a cardiac episode but was in stable condition. I put my phone away and had dinner with colleagues. A week later, I found another article. He'd had an emergency, stent placed, major cardiac damage, stable condition. I didn't call. Nearly a year after the gala that almost killed me, I was at a restaurant in Cambridge celebrating my promotion to senior director. David and I were looking at the menu when I looked up and saw Michelle, 3 tables away. She saw me at the same exact moment. Her face went through like 5 different expressions before she excused herself from her dinner party and walked straight to our table. "Rachel," she said. Her voice was sharp enough to cut. "Where the hell have you been?" "Michelle, nice to see you." "Nice to see me? Are you kidding? Dad had a heart attack, and you couldn't even bother to visit him in the hospital. You blocked all our phone numbers. Mom and Dad have been searching for you for over a year. You cut us off completely like we meant nothing to you. I flatlined twice during surgery while you and Mom and Dad were eating cake at your party. That's not fair. You didn't know how serious it was. The ambulance said you were stable. I flatlined twice. The doctor told David I came within minutes of dying, and nobody from my family came to the hospital that night." Michelle flushed. I didn't know what to say. It was awkward. It was awkward. My near-death experience was awkward for you. You're being unfair. Mom and Dad came to see you. They brought you flowers. 3 days later, after calling me melodramatic and suggesting I'd ruined your party on purpose, I picked up my water glass just to have something to do, and I asked her the question I'd been sitting with for a year. "Do you want to know what's wrong with me?" "What?" "Nothing. For the first time in my life, nothing is wrong with me. I'm well and happy, and I have people around me who actually care whether I live or die." "We care, Rachel," she said, but her words sounded empty. "No, you worry about how my absence affects you. That's not the same thing." "So what? You're just never going to speak to us again." "I'm not pretending anything. I'm just choosing not to maintain relationships with people who've shown me I don't matter to them unless I play the role they want me to play." Michelle stood there for another moment, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to say something else but couldn't find the words. David reached over and squeezed my hand. I looked at him and he just nodded. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "I really am." 3 months later, almost exactly a year after the gala, I was at my apartment when someone buzzed from the lobby. The doorman called to tell me my mother was downstairs and wanted to see me. Something in his voice, like he was worried about her, made me say yes. When my mom got to my door, she looked smaller than I remembered. Older. Her lipstick was smeared from crying, and she was holding her purse like it was a lifeline. "Rachel, please, can we talk?" I let her in, but didn't offer her a seat. We stood in my entryway, maybe 2 feet apart, but worlds away from each other. "Your father had another episode yesterday," she said. "They don't think he has much time left. His heart is failing." The shock was real. I'd assumed he'd recovered from the first one. He wasn't managing his medication properly. Went back to working too many hours. I stood there looking at my mother, crying, trying to find any emotion in what she was telling me. Her husband was dying, and I felt nothing. "Your father is asking for you," she said. "He wants to see you before." And I asked her the same question I should have asked that night in the hospital. That night when I was dying, "Why didn't you come?" She wiped her eyes. "The doctor said you were in surgery, and there was nothing we could do. You could have been there when I woke up. You could have canceled the rest of the party. You could have acted like you cared, even a little bit, that your daughter might not survive the night." She looked genuinely confused, like she couldn't understand why I was bringing up something so obviously ancient and irrelevant. "We did care," she said. "You didn't have to say it, Mom. You showed me over and over again." The gala was just the last confirmation of something I'd known my whole life. She asked if I could let go of my resentment long enough to be there for my dying father, and I realized she still didn't get it. She thought this was about jealousy or holding grudges. She didn't understand that when you show a child they don't matter, that lesson sticks. I'm not coming, I said. My father died 3 days later. The obituary was in the Boston Globe. There was a funeral at a church in Cambridge with speeches from colleagues and family. I read the whole thing sitting at my kitchen table, drinking coffee, feeling like I was reading about a stranger. David was worried. He asked if I was okay having complicated feelings about it. I'm sad the way I'd feel about any person dying, I said. Not about losing my father. Is that wrong? He hugged me. No, I think you made the right choice. Sophie Michelle got my new number somehow and left me a voicemail after the funeral. She was sobbing, calling me heartless, saying I'd killed our father with my selfishness. I erased the message without responding. The months after that were quiet. I threw myself into work, got engaged to David that spring, started planning a small wedding with just close friends. I was building a life that had no room for the family I was born into. A year after my father's death, I was walking through Boston Common when I saw my mother sitting on a bench alone, feeding pigeons from a bag of breadcrumbs. She looked so diminished, I almost didn't recognize her. I sat down next to her, keeping a careful distance. "How are you?" I asked. She looked up and I saw her register who I was. I watched her face go through a dozen micro-expressions before landing on resignation. "I'm okay," she said quietly. "How are you?" "I'm well. I got engaged." "Congratulations." We sat in silence, watching pigeons fight over breadcrumbs. "Your sister got married last month," she finally said. "Small ceremony, just family. What's left of it, anyway." "I hope she's happy." "She is. James treats her well." More silence. "Does she ever ask about me?" "Sometimes. She feels bad about everything." "She should." My mother turned to look at me. "Do you hate us?" I considered lying, but I went with the truth instead. "No, I don't hate you. I just don't need you anymore." "That's worse somehow," she said. She laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. "Hate would at least mean we still mattered to you." And I told her something I'd figured out over the past year. "You had a choice, Mom. Every single day you had a choice about how to treat me, how to prioritize me, and how to show up for me. And every single time you chose something else, someone else. Eventually, I stopped waiting for you to choose me." She asked if there was any way to mend it. I was honest. No. There's nothing to fix because I'm not broken. I'm just done. "So this is permanent?" she asked. "You're never coming back?" I stood up. "I'm not coming back because I was never really there to begin with. You were so busy polishing Michelle into the perfect daughter that you never noticed I'd left." And I walked away from that bench. I didn't look back. That was 4 years ago. I'm 35 now. David and I got married at a vineyard in Napa in front of 50 of our closest friends. We own a house. I'm made partner at my firm last year. We're talking about starting a family. My life is full and rich and completely separate from the people who raised me. But sometimes, late at night when David's asleep, I scroll through my phone and see other people's family photos. I feel that phantom ache where something used to be. But then I remember the hospital bracelet. I remember the operating table. I remember waking up and realizing the people who were supposed to love me most chose a party over my life. And I remember that choosing myself wasn't vengeance or punishment. It was survival. So no, I don't feel guilty. I don't wonder if I should have tried harder or forgiven more readily. I just move on. Because my life is proof that you can not only survive, but actually thrive when you're unloved by your family. You can build something greater from the debris of shattered relationships. All you have to do is be willing to let go. I let go 4 years ago on an operating table when I flatlined twice and no one from my family noticed. And I've been free ever since.